The ocean is a silent cathedral of the unknown, a black empire stretching across more than 70% of our planet, yet hiding more secrets than the stars above. We have walked the moon, sent machines to Mars, and photographed galaxies millions of years away, and still, the deepest parts of Earth's own waters remain untouched, unexplored, and unwelcoming. Beneath the crushing weight of 7 miles of water, where no sunlight has ever existed and where pressure could destroy steel like paper, lies a world untouched since time before memory. It was here, in the deepest wound in the planet, the Mariana Trench, that something impossible awakened. On the night of March 9, 2019, inside a remote U.S. naval acoustic monitoring station on Guam, a faint anomaly appeared on a deep-sea sonar grid, a tiny tremor across an ocean floor frequency chart. So minuscule that most operators would have dismissed it as seismic background noise. But then it repeated exactly 11 minutes and 27 seconds apart, with the precision of a heartbeat or a clock counting downward. At first, the technicians assumed it was equipment malfunction. But curiosity became dread when Commander Joseph Hart ordered the waveform isolated and amplified. The room fell dead quiet as a deep, resonant tone filled the speakers, a vibration so low it made their teeth ache and the lights flicker. It wasn't whale song. It wasn't submarine interference. It wasn't geological movement. It carried structure, deliberate spacing, and mathematical symmetry patterns that did not occur in nature. Then, without warning, the tone shifted. Slowly, impossibly, the hum bent upward in pitch, warping like metal under pressure, reshaping itself into 4 sharp pulses like knuckles tapping rhythmically against a heavy door, followed by a long, dragging breath that seemed to shiver through the bones of every person present. And then came something that froze every soul in the room. A voice, thin, stretched, impossible, as if carried through miles of crushing black water and torn through layers of static and metallic distortion. A whisper, fragile, shaking, ancient, spoke a single word that none who heard it would ever forget. Hello. The room erupted into chaos. Chairs scraped backwards. Someone gasped. Another stumbled away from the console, as if distance might somehow provide safety from what they had just heard. The signal cut off, leaving dead silence thick enough to choke on. And exactly 11 minutes and 27 seconds later, the signal returned, identical in structure, identical in pitch, identical in every terrifying detail. This time, those present listened in absolute dread, knowing what was coming, but powerless to stop it. The same warped buildup, the same pulsing pattern, and then once again the word, hello. Naval staff argued in panicked voices, insisting it was a hoax, a cyber talk, a manipulated recording pumped into the system by a foreign intelligence agency. But there was no incoming data route, no external interference pathway. The signal was not being received from the airwaves or satellites. It was arriving directly through the network of ocean floor acoustic sensors. It was coming upward, transmitted from a depth no craft, human, or machine could ever survive. 36,721 feet beneath the surface, deeper than life as we understand it, deeper than any known geological structures or caverns, deeper than the boundaries of science. A marine acoustic specialist, Dr. Mara Ellison, rushed into the control room after being urgently summoned from her dorm at 2 a.m. She listened once, removed her headphones slowly, and whispered that what they were hearing was not communication, but identification, an acoustic signal used by intelligent species to express awareness of another presence. In simpler terms, something below them was saying, "I know you are there." Fear swept through the control room like a sickness. Someone asked whether they should respond. Someone else begged them not to. The facility's power fluctuated, the lights dimmed, and screens flickered as if the signal was affecting electricity itself, forcing itself into circuits and metal. As the next transmission began to rise again in pitch, The commander shouted for systems to be disabled, but no one moved, transfixed by the horror of hearing something that should not exist. The pulsing grew louder, faster, more violent as, if whatever was below was now impatient. The pressure in the room thickened, crushing the lungs. And for a moment, several operators reported feeling as if the walls were closing inward around them. Then, for the third time, the voice returned. Not calm, not patient, but strange, reaching upward from an abyss that has swallowed civilizations long before ours existed. This time, the whisper trembled as if filled with pain. Hello. A question. A call. A knock at the door of the living. The last words spoken in that control room before panic overtook order were delivered in a voice barely above a breath. From an operator who trembled uncontrollably as he spoke. It's not asking who we are. It already knows. And somewhere below, in a place no light has ever touched, something ancient waited for an answer. The minutes that followed the third transmission were a blur of panic and controlled silence. The kind where fear is not loud, but suffocating. Orders were barked. Phones rang across secure lines, and armed guards swept the operations wing as if an invisible enemy might already be inside the building. Within an hour, the facility was locked down under emergency classification protocol. And every digital record of the event was scrubbed from open networks. A transport helicopter arrived just before dawn, carrying a small group of specialists whose names did not appear in any naval roster or public scientific registry. Among them was Dr. Mara Ellison, a marine acoustics prodigy whose controversial research into what she called cognitive resonance patterns had nearly cost her career. She stepped into the operations room with a calmness that seemed unnatural in the atmosphere of fear. And when she listened to the recording again, now stabilized and slowed to a fraction of its original playback speed, the expression that crossed her face was not confusion, but recognition. She asked for complete silence, and for nearly a full minute. The room hung breathless as the pitch-shifted signal rippled through the speakers, like a heartbeat echoing across the walls of a cathedral. "This isn't communication," she finally said, her voice unsteady. "This is a response." She explained that every intelligent acoustic species uses a signature pattern to acknowledge another's presence: whales, dolphins, even certain deep-sea cephalopods whose sounds we can barely detect. But this pattern was not organic. It followed a mathematical structure almost identical to human neurolinguistic frequency, the same rhythm our brains use when processing spoken language. In other words, something at the bottom of the ocean wasn't just making sound, was speaking in a way designed to be understood. One officer objected angrily, insisting no life could speak under that pressure and no technology could survive such depth. Dr. Ellison turned toward him, her voice trembling as she asked, "Then how do you explain that it already knows our timing, that it adjusted itself to respond every time we listened?" Silence spread like poison. Someone suggested it was artificial, perhaps an experimental Russian deep-sea drone. Another argued it could be a natural frequency resonance bouncing between underwater fault lines. But Dr. Ellison shook her head. The signal had changed every time it was played, subtly imitating human speech patterns more accurately, like something learning, evolving, adapting. Machines do not evolve. Rocks do not mimic language. Whales do not speak in symmetrical mathematical grids. Something was listening. Something was answering. By sunrise, a decision was made at the highest classified level. A vessel would descend to the anomaly's coordinates to capture physical data. A deep-sea expedition team was assembled under absolute secrecy, drawn from specialists in oceanography, military engineering, biological research, and psychological response, an unusual mix that suggested even those at the top believed the threat might extend beyond the physical. Codename Delta III Initiative. The mission leader, Captain Adrian Wolf. a hardened naval officer who had commanded rescue operations in some of the most dangerous waters on Earth, addressed the team with a warning that chilled every soul until further notice. What you are about to encounter does not exist. Nothing leaves this room. Nothing. While they spoke, the signal continued beneath them, rising and falling like breathing in the darkness below. But something changed. The pattern shifted again. The long hum deepened, resonating so powerfully that coffee cups rattled against metal tables. The pulsing intensified, more violent, more urgent, and then all at once every screen in the control room went black. The lights cut out. The emergency generators kicked on a full second later, flooding the room in harsh red warning light. But it wasn't the blackout that froze everyone where they stood. It was the new voice that echoed through the malfunctioning speakers. Not a whisper this time. Not distant. Not weak. Clear. Direct. This time, the voice sounded closer. Sharpened, as if it had crossed an impossible distance in seconds. One word, spoken with precision, spoken like a command. Come. Dr. Ellison staggered backward, her hand covering her mouth as tears welled in her eyes. It's not asking for contact, she said, barely able to speak. It's issuing an invitation. Something beneath the ocean, something ancient. Something intelligent, something immeasurably powerful was calling them downward. The question was no longer what it was. The question was whether they would survive what waited for them in the dark. The crew gathered in the main lab, the air thick with an unspoken dread. Each person silently wrestling with the same impossible thought. Something was down there, and it wanted to be heard. Dr. Mara paced slowly in front of the flickering monitor, the dim red emergency lights washing her face in a feverish glow. Her fingers trembling as she replayed the last 5 seconds of the recording. The waveform shook the screen with unnatural violence, as if the sound itself was alive, pushing against the digital barrier that contained it. "Look closely," she whispered, freezing the image. Zooming into a segment where the vibrations formed a strange geometric shape, a perfect spiral. Like a nautilus shell, like an ancient symbol etched in stone. Nobody moved. Captain Rhodes's jaw locked tight, a tick pulsing beneath his skin. "That's biological," said Helmsman Carter, barely breathing. No structure created by natural earthquake acoustics could form something that precise. Then the lights overhead flickered again once. Twice, 5 times in rapid succession, and the floor beneath their boots trembled like a giant heartbeat coming through the hull. It lasted only 3 seconds, but it changed the mood instantly. Alvarez slammed his palms over his ears and whispered, "It's getting louder." Yet none of them could hear anything except silence. Mara turned sharply. "Alvarez, what do you hear?" His eyes unfocused, pupils wide, sweat dripping down his cheeks, his voice cracking like a child's voice. Whispering from far away, saying, "Open the door." The others exchanged horrified looks. The nearest hatch was sealed and marked with yellow hazard tape. Nitrogen monoxide entry, pressure lock failure. It led to the observation chamber overlooking the Mariana Abyss, the deepest window ever built by human hands. Rhodes stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Nobody opens anything. We don't react to hallucinations." But Alvarez stared at the hatch like a sleepwalker, his breath fogging the air. "It's not hallucination," he said, slowly turning to face them. "It knows my name." A sudden metallic groan tore through the facility, a sound like steel bending under the weight of an enormous hand. The table shook, glass equipment rattling and falling to the floor, monitors jumping static. The emergency klaxon screamed through the corridors. A rising mechanical wail followed by an automated warning. Hull stress detected. External pressure exceeding safe limits. Secure all compartments. Carter ran to the control panel, flipping through diagnostics. Pressure is rising, but there's no geological activity registered on any instrument. Mara's voice fractured into panic. Something is pushing from the outside. Rhodes grabbed the intercom, shouting orders across the base, his voice barely audible through static interference. Somewhere in the distance, a single piercing sound echoed like a whale song. But unnatural, layered with tones no human throat could ever produce. Alvarez whispered again, trembling violently. "They're calling us. They're right outside the glass." Nobody wanted to ask the question forming in every mind, but finally Carter said it out loud, voice shaking. "Captain, what if that signal wasn't a message? What if it was a warning? The ocean is a place of silence, but that silence is never empty. It is filled with whispers we cannot hear until now. After the terrifying days spent locked in the depths of the secret naval base, the Delta III team prepared to descend aboard their vessel, the Arkran, a submersible designed to withstand pressures few have dared confront. The night air was heavy with an unnatural stillness, as if the sea itself held its breath, waiting. The team's faces were illuminated by the pale glow of monitors, their nerves taut with anticipation and fear. As the Arkran slipped beneath the surface, the crew could feel the crushing weight of the water pressing down, muffling the outside world, isolating them in an eerie cocoon of metal and glass. Every meter deeper the sub sank, the temperature dropped, the light faded, and the silence grew more absolute. At 23,000 feet, instruments began to spike erratically. The signal stronger now filled the cabin with a vibrating hum that was felt in the bones rather than heard. The voice returned, not as a distant whisper, but closer, clearer, calling out again, "Hello, ... come." The crew's eyes widened as the sub shook under an unseen force. Lights flickered, and instruments failed one by one. On the screens outside the viewport, shapes began to take form, enormous structures rising from the abyss floor. Geometric and alien, impossibly vast, their surfaces etched with glowing runes that pulsed with an otherworldly light. The water around the sub shimmered with bioluminescence, but this light was unnatural, too rhythmic, too deliberate. The crew strained their eyes, trying to discern figures lurking just beyond the glow forms that moved with purpose, watching, waiting. Tension built as the sub inched closer to the ocean floor, every creak of the hull magnified in the suffocating silence. Suddenly, the vessel lurched violently, throwing crew members against their restraints. Alarms blared as systems began to fail, and through the thick silence, a voice crackled weakly over the comms. "It's not just a signal. It's a doorway." A scream cut through the static, followed by the sound of metal tearing. Something ripping against the hull as if the ocean itself was trying to break in. Panic set in as the sub's power faded, lights dimmed, and the crew were plunged into darkness, left to confront the unknown forces waiting in the cold, crushing blackness below. The moments that followed the eerie silence were filled with a suffocating sense of dread as the Arkran drifted deeper into an abyss not just of water, but of something far older and more sinister. The crew's attempts to regain control of the submersible were met with failure. Electronic systems crashed one by one, replaced by a strange electrical interference that danced across the consoles like unseen fingers. The glow from the alien runes outside grew more intense, casting long, unnatural shadows that seemed to stretch into the very souls of those trapped inside. In the oppressive darkness, the voice returned, no longer distant or whispered, but clear and commanding, echoing inside their minds with a clarity that defied explanation. "You have come. You see, you listen. But do you understand?" The words reverberated with a power that shook the crew to their core. And with them came visions, flashes of a world long forgotten, of civilizations swallowed by the ocean's depths, of sacrifices made to keep what dwelled beneath from rising. Dr. Ellison's voice trembled as she muttered, "This is a warning, or worse, a summons. Panic set in as the vessel rocked violently, the pressure hull creaking under a force that seemed alive, watching, probing. The hatch alarm blared, and a chilling draft swept through the cabin. Cold and wet, as if the ocean itself had seeped inside. Captain Wolf barked orders to seal compartments, but it was futile. The very environment was turning hostile, the line between man and abyss blurring. Suddenly, the viewport flashed with an impossible sight, the faint outline of humanoid shapes. Massive and ancient, suspended motionless in the water. Their eyes glowing with a light that was both terrifying and sad. One figure raised a hand, as if beckoning, and the voice whispered again, softer this time. Almost sorrowful, we are waiting. For you? And then, darkness swallowed the Archeran, leaving only the echo of that haunting invitation drifting endlessly through the black water. The moments that followed the eerie silence were filled with a suffocating sense of dread, as the Archeran drifted deeper into an abyss not just of water, but of something far older and more sinister. The crew's attempts to regain control of the submersible were met with failure. Electronic systems crashed one by one, replaced by a strange electrical interference that danced across the consoles like unseen fingers. The glow from the alien runes outside grew more intense, casting long, unnatural shadows that seemed to stretch into the very souls of those trapped inside. In the oppressive darkness, the voice returned, no longer distant or whispered, but clear and commanding, echoing inside their minds with a clarity that defied explanation. You have come. You see, you listen. But do you understand? The words reverberated with a power that shook the crew to their core. And with them came visions, flashes of a world long forgotten, of civilizations swallowed by the ocean's depths, of sacrifices made to keep what dwelled beneath from rising. Dr. Ellison's voice trembled as she muttered, "This is a warning, or worse, a summons." Panic set in as the vessel rocked violently, the pressure hull creaking under a force that seemed alive, watching, probing. The hatch alarm blared, and a chilling draft swept through the cabin. Cold and wet, as if the ocean itself had seeped inside. Captain Wolf barked orders to seal compartments, but it was futile. The very environment was turning hostile, the line between man and abyss blurring. Suddenly, the viewport flashed with an impossible sight, the faint outline of humanoid shapes. Massive and ancient, suspended motionless in the water. Their eyes glowing with a light that was both terrifying and sad. One figure raised a hand, as if beckoning, and the voice whispered again, softer this time. Almost sorrowful. We are waiting. For you? And then, darkness swallowed the Archeran, leaving only the echo of that haunting invitation drifting endlessly through the black water. The darkness after the Archeran's disappearance was absolute, swallowing the ocean floor in a silence so profound it seemed to erase time itself. Back at the surface, frantic search and rescue teams combed the vast expanse above the Mariana Trench, their sonar cutting through the murky depths, but finding nothing, no trace of the vessel. No signal, no debris, as if it had been erased from existence. Meanwhile, deep within classified naval command centers, the story was far darker. Records showed the signal from below had ceased for only a fleeting moment before resuming with a new, chilling urgency. An encrypted message circulated among the highest echelons of military and scientific leadership. Something beneath the ocean had crossed a threshold, breached a barrier that should never have been broken. The Delta III initiative was disbanded, files sealed, and personnel warned never to speak of what they'd seen or heard. But in hushed tones, rumors spread of an ancient intelligence awoken from a slumber that predated humanity. Witnesses reported hearing the voice in their dreams, whispering that the ocean itself was alive, watching, waiting to reclaim what was lost. Some believe the structures glimpsed by the Archaean were remnants of a forgotten civilization, one that had survived beneath the crushing depths for eons, growing and evolving in darkness beyond our understanding. Others feared that the ocean's call was a summons to something far more terrible, an invitation to join a cosmic chorus of silence and despair. The question haunted everyone. What would happen if the ocean answered back? And who or what was waiting patiently for us to respond? In the weeks following the Archaean's disappearance, strange phenomena began to plague coastal towns across the Pacific Rim, as if the ocean itself was reacting to something unseen beneath its waves. Fishermen reported eerie voices carried on the wind, soft whispers that mimicked the cries of lost loved ones, pulling them toward the water's edge in the dead of night. Radios across remote villages cracked with bursts of static that resolved into the same haunting word: hello. A thick fog rolled in unbidden, blanketing harbors and shrouding ships in ghostly silence, making compasses spin wildly and GPS signals falter inexplicably. Scientists monitoring marine life noticed unprecedented behavior. Schools of fish darted away from certain zones as if sensing an invisible predator, while bioluminescent creatures pulsed in unnatural rhythms, forming patterns that echoed the mysterious signal's numeric structure. Satellite images captured fleeting shadows beneath the waves' fast, shifting shapes moving with intelligence, avoiding detection but impossible to ignore. The military increased patrols, deploying deep sonar arrays and underwater drones, only to have their equipment mysteriously disabled or lost in zones of crushing pressure and signal interference. Behind closed doors, psychological evaluations of surviving personnel revealed alarming symptoms: insomnia, paranoia, and vivid hallucinations of voices calling from the depths. Experts speculated that whatever was beneath the ocean was not only intelligent but capable of penetrating human minds, bending perceptions, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. Old maritime legends found renewed interest: stories of ancient sea gods and underwater civilizations, whispered warnings carved into weathered logs and journals forgotten by time. The world stood on edge, caught between disbelief and terror, as the ocean's dark secrets slowly surfaced, threatening to drown all hope in its cold, endless abyss. As the strange occurrences multiplied, governments around the Pacific began to convene emergency meetings behind closed doors, their discussions veiled in secrecy and urgency. Intelligence agencies scrambled to analyze intercepted communications, searching for signs that the signal from the depths was not merely natural, but deliberately crafted an act of contact, or a warning from something ancient and powerful. Naval commanders debated deploying advanced deep-sea vessels equipped with experimental technology designed to withstand pressures beyond any previous mission. Yet fears grew that such attempts might provoke a response too terrible to contain. Meanwhile, cultural and religious groups emerged with varying interpretations. Some claimed the signal was a message from divine beings long forgotten by humanity. Others warned it heralded the return of primordial horrors lurking beneath the waves since before mankind's rise. Among the scientific community, the phenomenon sparked fierce debate, with theories ranging from undiscovered intelligent marine life to extraterrestrial influence, or even the ocean itself as a sentient entity awakening after millennia of slumber. Mental health professionals noted a disturbing rise in patients, reporting auditory hallucinations and nightmares centered around the ocean's voice, sparking speculation that exposure to the signal or its effects might cause neurological changes or psychic disturbances. Despite growing fear, researchers pushed forward, desperate to decode the meaning behind the pulses and whispered words. As new evidence emerged, one chilling possibility loomed above all others. The signal was not just a call, it was an invitation to cross a threshold between known reality and an abyss of cosmic darkness. And if that threshold was crossed, the ocean would no longer be silent. It would speak, and humanity would have to answer. Months passed in uneasy silence, but beneath the calm surface, the ocean's secret pulsed stronger than ever, growing louder in ways unseen and unfathomable. With each passing day, new data from deep-sea observatories revealed a surge of unexplained seismic activity near the Mariana Trench quakes so precise they seemed orchestrated, resonating in patterns that echoed the mysterious signal's numeric code. The world's top oceanographers and geophysicists convened in closed sessions, baffled by the synchronization between these tremors and the repeating message that haunted their instruments. "Hello. Come." The ocean itself appeared to be awakening, an immense living entity stirring after eons of dormancy. Meanwhile, on the edges of human understanding, a small cadre of researchers delved into forbidden archives and lost manuscripts, texts from forgotten cultures that spoke of the deep ones, guardians of ancient knowledge who dwelled beneath the waves, waiting for a time when the surface world would be ready to listen. Publicly, governments increased patrols and restricted access to the trench's vicinity, but rumors leaked of secret expeditions, unreported disappearances, and technology seized for experiments beyond human comprehension. At the same time, inexplicable phenomena began manifesting far from the ocean's grasp. Inexplicable power outages, strange weather patterns, and reports of people vanishing near bodies of water worldwide. Some whispered that the ocean's call had begun to ripple through reality itself, breaking down barriers between worlds. In isolated coastal towns, survivors of these events described seeing ghostly figures rising from the sea, hearing voices carried on the wind, and feeling an overwhelming presence watching just beyond sight. Scientists warned that the ocean's awakening was not simply a natural phenomenon, but the stirring of a consciousness older than time, an intelligence vast and unknowable. It was no longer a question of if, but when this force would fully emerge, what it would demand when it did. The deeper they probed into the ocean's secret, the more the boundary between science and myth began to blur. As the Delta III remnants and allied researchers uncovered fragments of an unimaginable truth, the signal source was not merely a natural occurrence or a mechanical anomaly. It was tied to something ancient, something that had existed long before human history began. Deep beneath the crushing pressure of the Mariana Trench lay a vast network of structures, colossal ruins stretching beyond the reach of any submarine, fashioned from materials unknown to modern science. These ruins hinted at a civilization so old and advanced that its very presence distorted reality around it, warping time and space. As scientists analyzed the signals further, they realized the pulse was a form of communication encoded in quantum vibrations, attempt by this ancient intelligence to reach out, to establish contact, or perhaps to warn. More chilling still were the accounts from deep-sea drones sent to explore the ruins, which reported glimpses of strange creatures, beings that defied classification. Neither fully biological nor mechanical, with eyes that glowed like stars trapped in the abyss. The drone's feeds often cut out abruptly, leaving only static and whispered transmissions that spoke in no human tongue, but in tones that resembled the original signal's haunting pattern. Psychologists theorized that the signal and these entities had a psychic link to humans, able to induce hallucinations and manipulate perception, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. As the world watched nervously, the ocean itself seemed to pulse with life, and ancient heartbeat growing louder, echoing across continents and into the dreams of millions. The question hung heavy in the air. What did this intelligence want? Were they benevolent, malevolent, or simply indifferent to human existence? And most terrifying of all, had humanity already answered the call? The moments that followed the eerie silence were filled with a suffocating sense of dread, as the Archaean drifted deeper into an abyss, not just of water, but of something far older and more sinister. The crew's attempts to regain control of the submersible were met with failure. Electronic systems crashed one by one, replaced by a strange electrical interference that danced across the consoles like unseen fingers. The glow from the alien runes outside grew more intense, casting long, unnatural shadows that seemed to stretch into the very souls of those trapped inside. In the oppressive darkness, the voice returned, no longer distant or whispered, but clear and commanding, echoing inside their minds with a clarity that defied explanation. You have come. You see, you listen. But do you understand? The words reverberated with a power that shook the crew to their core. And with them came visions, flashes of a world long forgotten, of civilizations swallowed by the ocean's depths, of sacrifices made to keep what dwelled beneath from rising. Dr. Ellison's voice trembled as she muttered, "This is a warning, or worse, a summons." Panic set in as the vessel rocked violently, the pressure hull creaking under a force that seemed alive, watching, probing. The hatch alarm blared, and a chilling draft swept through the cabin. Cold and wet, as if the ocean itself had seeped inside. Captain Wolf barked orders to seal compartments, but it was futile. The very environment was turning hostile, the line between man and abyss blurring. Suddenly, the viewport flashed with an impossible sight, the faint outline of humanoid shapes. Massive and ancient, suspended motionless in the water, their eyes glowing with a light that was both terrifying and sad. One figure raised a hand, as if beckoning, and the voice whispered again, softer this time, almost sorrowful. "We are waiting. For you." And then, darkness swallowed the Arcran, leaving only the echo of that haunting invitation drifting endlessly through the black water. The final descent into darkness was no longer just a mission, it was a reckoning. The world's attention had shifted, quietly and irreversibly, toward the abyss that had spoken, whispered, and now demanded to be heard. The Delta III initiative had been disbanded, but the knowledge it uncovered refused to die. Deep beneath the ocean's surface, a new expedition was launched not by governments or militaries, but by a coalition of scientists, mystics, and survivors, united by the desperate need to understand what waited in the crushing black. The vessel, a state-of-the-art submersible named the Abyssal Horizon, carried its crew down through layers of cold, silent water toward the ruins and the signal source. Every meter sank them further into an ancient nightmare. The pressure outside was unimaginable, but inside, the weight of fear was even heavier. As they approached the glowing structures, the water seemed to pulse with life, as if the ocean itself was breathing. The signal grew louder, no longer just a call, but a chorus of voices, layered and intertwined, speaking in a language older than time. The crew's instruments recorded strange fluctuations, and the submersible's lights revealed figures massive, ethereal, and watching hovering just beyond the limits of perception. The voice that had haunted them now became clearer, almost pleading, "Come. Join us. Listen." As they prepared to breach the ancient gateway, the boundary between reality and the abyss blurred. The last message from the crew was fragmented, distorted, a whisper lost to the crushing depths. The ocean had opened its door. The world waited, breath held for what would emerge. The ocean, vast and merciless, had spoken, and now its voice grew louder, echoing through the depths like a summons from the abyss itself. The crew of the Abyssal Horizon felt the weight of that call pressing on their minds as the vessel edged closer to the glowing gateway etched into the colossal ruins. Every breath inside the submersible was heavy with anticipation and fear. Every heartbeat echoed in the confined space as if synchronizing with the pulsing light outside. The signal had transformed into a complex symphony, layered with whispers, calls, and tones that transcended human comprehension. It was no longer a simple greeting, but an invitation, a beckoning from something that defied logic and time. As the vessel crossed the threshold into the unknown, sensors went haywire, systems flickered. and the very fabric of reality seemed to warp. Outside, shapes twisted and writhed, not fully tangible but undeniably present, watching, waiting. The crew experienced visions, flashes of forgotten worlds submerged beneath endless oceans, of beings ancient beyond measure, and of a darkness so vast it threatened to consume all light. The whispers grew into voices, speaking in tongues lost to mankind, urging surrender, unity, and awakening. The abyssal horizon became a conduit between worlds, a fragile bridge that could shatter at any moment. And as the final barrier dissolved, the crew knew the ocean's secret was no longer silent, was alive, aware, and ready to claim what had been promised long ago. The final moments inside the abyssal horizon blurred the boundaries between reality and nightmare as the crew became vessels for the ocean's will. Their minds flooded with visions and voices that echoed through the endless depths. Time lost meaning as memories merged with ancient knowledge, revealing the truth behind the signal, a call from a consciousness older than Earth itself. A guardian of secrets buried beneath crushing pressure and darkness. The crew witnessed civilizations rising and falling beneath the waves, sacrifices made to contain the power lurking in the abyss, and the relentless patience of the deep intelligence as it awaited the moment to awaken. The air grew thick with a palpable energy, the submersible's walls seeming to breathe alongside the ocean outside. The voices whispered promises of enlightenment and oblivion, a choice between joining the eternal chorus beneath the waves or resisting and being lost to the abyss forever. One by one, the crew succumbed to the pull, their bodies remaining, but their minds becoming part of the ancient signal, a living transmission sent to the surface world. The abyssal horizon drifted silently in the dark waters, its lights dimming as it became a beacon, a testament to the ocean's call and the price paid by those who answered. Above, the sea returned to its deceptive calm, hiding the awakening below. As the signal continued to pulse, waiting for the next listener, brave or foolish enough to hear.